Good morning, and welcome to a new episode of Meatpacking Unpacked, Community Connected, brought to you by the Meatpacking District. My name is Jeffrey LeFrancois, and I'm the Executive Director of the Meatpacking Business Improvement District. Today, I'm delighted to be joined, in fact, by Barbara Askins, President and CEO of the 125th Street Business Improvement District in Harlem. Barbara has done extensive work in the field of improving cities as a public involvement specialist on transportation, environmental and facility planning projects, working on major projects in several cities that included reconstructions of highways and city streets, upgrading rail and bus systems, improving sewage treatment facilities, creating public spaces, and sports and convention centers. In 1993, she successfully created the first and only business improvement district in the Harlem community. Under her leadership, the 125th Street bid has received local, state, national, and indeed international recognition. She is guiding the development of a results-oriented strategy involving retail plans, rezonings for future growth, cultural sustainability, and evaluating the interplay between science, technology, and businesses to create sustainable urban solutions to transform areas that have been traditionally difficult to organize, such as the 125th Street corridor, into a healthier commercial district. Barbara, always good to see you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me, Jeffrey.
We're placemakers, and we wanted to talk to, you've heard me say this, but our viewers really don't. And it's Black History Month, and we wanted to have a conversation sort of steeped in that, but urban planning and placemaking is a very white world. And you are a well-connected, powerful Black woman running a bid in a historically Black neighborhood. And I wanted to know what that's been like, sort of first out the gate, and then dig a little deeper into the world of placemaking.
Sure, certainly. So it's been first a rewarding journey. And as you know, our industry is a very new industry. So I'm in the scheme of things. So, I'm fortunate to have been a part of shaping and growing what the industry is about, because like I said to you before, it actually started in Canada, moved into the United States, and and so forth and so on, and we can cite some of that stuff later on. But for me, being an African American woman in the middle of this industry, when I started, I didn't even know it was an industry, and I didn't know that I was in the middle of something. How it became known to me was when people from other parts of the country start calling me saying that this 125th Street bid had to happen. And so I'm like, who are all these white people? What are they calling me about? How does this fit into with Harlem? And they're telling me what has to be done. So, so I had pressure to create this bid, not just locally, but also the world was looking at it. And that's when I got a real good sense of just how important 125th Street and the Harlem community was, because people were seeing if it could happen there, then maybe it could happen in other neighborhoods. And literally, that's how I got introduced to IDA. So back even before creating the bid in 1987, I think it was, IDA along with ULI, wanted to learn more about Harlem. We had receptions at the Studio Museum. So I didn't know what I was in the middle of, but I knew I was in the middle of something. I mean, ULI, white people said like it's everyday language. We don't know what, we didn't know what ULI was.
IDA is International Downtown Association. What is ULI?
ULI is, it's almost like, it's like IDA, but it's a bigger organization that does placemaking and planning. Okay. And that is their acronym, ULI. And a lot of people who are bid managers are in both organizations because they deal more with, property owners and placemaking and investments. And they do lots of research and reports. And they also are global. But they were looking at Harlem at the same time. So I guess what I could say to you in terms of what was it like, it was an isolated journey because we didn't we didn't have anybody who in Harlem who could guide in terms of how this should be done. And also, too, 125th Street had so many social issues at the time. So trying to elevate the importance of economics in the middle of an area that had been neglected was a major challenge. And it forced me, which was a good thing, to become more involved in the community. That's how I ended up on the community board. That's how I ended up, serving as leadership on the community board as, chairs of land use, chair of economic development. And then eventually I said, this is not going to happen. I have to become chair, which is what happens. And this has happened in my life several times. Same thing with IDA. I served on IDA, went through the whole thing. And finally, I said, you guys, I have to be chair. I can't be here, the only Black. It's like, and I'm not in the room. My voice has to be at the table. So otherwise, how are you going to understand, how to include? So ultimately, I pushed there, but I'm not looking to be chair of anything else at this point.
You've had many chairs, is what
yes,
you're
I've
saying.
Had many chairs. Yes.
I mean, so. When were you chair of IDA, which is a international association, basically of bid managers and bid-like organizations, a membership group around the world, right?
Yes, and so I can't give you the exact date. I can tell you it was a little more than 10 years ago.
Got it.
And so it was at a time what IDA did, and because Jeffrey, you and I talk about this inclusiveness and stuff all the time,
yep.
was they determined that they needed to have more diversity because for almost 50 years, IDA had been all white men. And so when they looked for diversity, they started adding women to the board. And there was bid managers who were women. And the women then said we needed to go beyond that. We need to add people of color. And so looking for people of color, across the nation, first, there's not many people of color. There's not many business improvement districts in community of color that exist. And that became challenging. And they found me. And so that's how I ended up there. And ultimately, as I said, if my voice is to be heard, then I need to be at the table because, we have to bring the issues that are making it difficult for business districts in areas like Harlem to grow in this placemaking industry.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the role that you played. I mean, the fact that you said people were calling you from around the country to say Harlem's got to do this to lead the way, I think it's pretty remarkable. Yeah,
it is. It's remarkable now being on this end of it. Mm-hmm. When it was happening, it was it was like confusing. I have to say it was confusing because I was new at creating business improvement districts. You read I had been doing transportation, environmental, and facility planning. But creating a bid, in a sense, used the same public involvement, techniques. You look at your primary market, which is your property owners. You look at your secondary markets or whatever, and you try to figure out how to communicate and extract their opinions and then pull it together into a workable program that everybody can buy into, which is, so my strong public involvement background was a natural for me to move into the role of creating a business improvement district, even though there was no template for how to do it.
Right. You told me an interesting story about how you've been, working with various consultants over the years, most of whom are majority or 100% white organizations that you hire. And the process that you go through to work with them is probably one that a lot of people don't think about and realize is a process. Do you remember? Yes. Share a little bit about what that process is like for you.
Well, the first thing that I realized, and I realized this a long time ago, like we create brochures to market our district and stuff, and graphic artists and all these people, they're great at doing it. But the one thing they don't consider is the target audience that you're speaking to. So the way that a lot of, if you notice, like my banners, I never buy a banner design from those companies because it doesn't speak to my market. I have to create the look of what's going to resonate with the community that I'm working in. And I apply this to everything, and that includes hiring consultants, because I know with all the pressures that African Americans experience, you give them this thick document on state of 125th Street, they're not going to read that. So I had to look at a way of how to take the same skill set that is used in majority communities and rewrite it into a way that the people in our community would not only understand it, embrace it, and engage. And this is, again, going back to the public involvement skills. So I would tell the consultant to go out and do what you do. And then after you get it done, come back and we're going to sit down and read it. And I'm going to show you how to Blackify it. Then this way, this is how I get the engagement. That comes with imagery, that comes with language, that comes with words. It comes with the things that the people in the community resonate with.
Which is what happens, I think, in so many communities, and people don't realize how that needs to work to be successful.
Yes, I mean, it does, because the thing about community involvement is that it's not that you necessarily are going to take the advice of everybody that, that gives you advice, but you do want to hear what they have to say, because 9 times out of 10, once you get that, even what you were thinking about doing will be better. And also it becomes an easier sale, So for you to sit in your office and come up with this and then, oh, I know it work and sell it. Oh my God, Black people, get out of here. I don't want to hear that. It's just not going to work. So engagement, it takes so much time. So engagement is really, really, really important, because when people feel like they are a part of it, they take ownership of it. But more importantly, they also fight for it to happen. So then you don't have to do all of the fighting with those who don't understand. They stand up behind it. So there are many layers to this, and some of it I think may seem like it's easy and natural, or the natural thing to do, but it doesn't happen. And even sometimes I forget, and I was like, oops, you go to this community board. Oops, I need to go visit all the bars. I need to be seen. I need people to see, feel, touch me, hear, understand, that I'm working with you, not against you.
Yeah, I think that's critical. So Harlem's very different today than it was in 1993.
Yeah.
What are you dealing with today?
Well, I'm dealing with the fact that anytime a business open up and it looks like it's, and I say look like it's from the white world, everyone used the word gentrification, from the newspapers to the documentaries to the community board discussions, all of that. So recently, many of you may have heard that about Trader Joe's coming to Harlem. And of course, the newspapers write, oh, it's a good thing, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the story, they ended with a gentrification note. And I think that this is a disservice to a lot of people. That project, saying it quickly, is a project that's being brought by Mark Muriel, who's the national president of the National Urban League. There's going to be a civil rights museum in there. There's going to be transitional housing for people who are transitioning out of foster care, that's done with L&M. They're moving their offices there. And the money has to come from somewhere. So of course you have national retailers but it's not just that national retailers are coming, that's a market. It's right there, so it makes sense. So I think that it's a disservice to the efforts of all the people who are trying to address all the social issues we have in the economic development of 125th Street, for people to cavalierly just keep using that. And it creates tensions, and it creates fear, and it also creates people, I'm getting out of here. It's too hard for me to survive in this environment. So one of the things that I'm working on is trying to find a way to show where there's opportunity. where there's opportunity and how to participate in growth. And that's not an easy thing to do, but that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is integrating the arts. I mean, we cannot lose the history about the arts, but I'm not worried about it now because the National Black Theater is going to redo their building, and that's going to be a great addition because, as you know, if you know the history, they are unapologetically Black. And so they are going to bring culture, you know, in a very sophisticated and very elevated way that everyone can become educated. And the Studio Museum is redoing what they're doing. And
and they have an expansion going on, right?
Yes, they do. They do. $125 million expansion, and they're repurposing for more engagement and education. And the Apollo Theater has expanded their program, and they're going to run the production space in the new Victoria Theater. So our anchors.
That's the old movie theater right next door, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a performance space. So you could probably now, I haven't spoken to Janelle, but I can envision people going to a show at the Apollo and walking a few doors down to a performance, you know, in the Victoria. So we're getting some achievements. And our whole goal for that was to create a cultural, you know, create a cultural destination that would be attractive to not only larger investors, but also would spur all small businesses that supports the new market that's coming in. That's, you know, a big vision, but slowly but surely the pieces are coming together, and we have the mechanism into the rezoning. We have a cultural bonus that if developers, it's in the rezoning laws, if developers provide space for arts, they get a 4-to-1 ratio, so they can build up 4 stories above the zoning density.
Right.
And that was a major accomplishment for us. So, you know, we're now trying to make that a reality.
Absolutely. I want to go back to your comment about the positive story about Trader Joe's ending on a negative note as it relates to gentrification. And a challenge I've put out to people, probably just my team, but I always like putting it out there is what is the positive word for gentrification? Gentrification carries a negative connotation. Is there a positive word that we should be thinking about using or reframing? Because I think to your point is it's about accessibility. And accessibility is not a bad thing. Everything in sort of everything we do is about access.
Yes. So you're right on, Jeffrey. I mean, I have been thinking of maybe we need to create a new word. You know, remember I created a word for doing business on 125th Street called Businessify, and I got it trademarked. So maybe we need to create a new word for gentrification, because first thing, gentrification isn't necessarily all bad, but you do have that connotation. You know, with growth, you do address a lot of other stuff like, you know, workforce, you know, jobs, not just jobs, but open up opportunities. We know that small businesses could not drive all of 125th Street. We came from under that, and we had high unemployment, and that's important. So, you know, I'm teaching this class, and you know about it, and that's one of the things I'm challenging them at Columbia is whether or not can we come up with a new word to describe what is really happening in a community of growth, rather than using gentrification all the time, every time you see something new. Because even when you, and also too, it's looked at in the lens from my point of view of 2 things, housing and retail. People of color are participating in growth. They're developers, they're licensees, they're brokers, that, you know, they're part of this whole ecosystem, and to just keep using that word loosely like that takes away from that. And lastly, what about the Africans? Are you including the Africans in this whole thing? Are they gentrifiers, or are they being counted as people of color? You yourself who have visited Harlem know how many new Africans that have moved into Harlem, and not just moved in, have a lot of businesses. And so how do you roll all that into this discussion?
Yeah, I think that's That's our challenge.
Yeah, it
And
is.
how do we make it successful at the same, continue the success in that way too?
Well, I think we as business improvement districts managers, and in light of how social issues basically just took center stage on its own, not with us. But when you look at leader and leadership, you know, uh, and I don't have the answer, but I do think that we have an opportunity to look at how to not only talk about it, but also to create programs that goes beyond just inclusion, because inclusion and diversity is becoming just like gentrification. It's a word that you use every time you go walk in the room and see a whole bunch of white people, and it's like, where's the diversity? Is this, we just have to stop, get away from these one word, descriptions of these experiences that we are having.
Yeah, I think that's a major point, and a big part of the sort of what's happened in the past year, and all the way folks are really, I think people are opening their eyes in a way that wasn't previously happening.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I do have hope for, business improvement districts, because we basically do and achieve at a high level things that other people literally walked away from. And that's why we were put there. We don't try to duplicate what's being done. We take on what's not being done to keep our area successful.
Yep. Well, this has been delightful, but I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, so we can unpack a little bit more about Barbara. So just a couple of questions so we can know a little bit more about you. Okay, so a night at the theater or a visit to the museum?
Oh, definitely a visit to the museum.
Okay. Brunch or dinner out to eat?
Dinner.
Okay. Paintings or photographs?
Oh my God, paintings.
And a road trip or vacation halfway around the world?
Vacation halfway around the world.
I know, which we need so badly right now.
Right, we do.
I think I'll just go straight, I'll get to the airport and just pick a destination someday.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for your insight and your stories. This was fantastic.
Can I have a quick last word? I can say.
Of course you can.
Okay. So certainly two things. As it relates to place, our audience is those who live, work, visit, and invest. Some people use play, learn. So we're working toward that audience. And you and I should think about, from Meatpacking to 125th Street, what kind of something can happen there. A lot of our people come to Meatpacking, and you're in Harlem all the time. So let's think about that.
Yeah.
I'd close with that.
That sounds good to me. So we will certainly keep the conversation going. And thank you so much for being here today. And thanks to everybody for joining us on Meatpacking Unpacked. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay tuned to hear from the Meatpacking District and the city's cast of characters across the cultural, political, and business spectrums. Thanks so much.